This is the 759th meeting of the Economic Club of New York. I'm Barbara Van Allen, President and CEO of the club, recognized as the premier nonpartisan forum for discussions on economic, social, and political issues. The club has now been around for more than a century, and we're fortunate enough to have hosted over 1,000 prominent guests, which that tradition of excellence continues up through and including today. I want to provide a warm welcome to students joining us virtually from Fordham University, NYU Stern School of Business, and Yeshiva University Cy Sims School of Business, as well as members of our largest ever class of 2024 fellows, a select group of diverse rising next-gen business thought leaders. It's my honor today to welcome back our guest, Garry Kasparov. Born in Baku, Azerbaijan, I'm not going to get that right. Garry became the under-18 chess champion of the USSR at the age of 12, the world under-20 champion at 17. He came to international fame as the youngest world chess champion in history in 1985 at the age of 22. He defended his title 5 times, including a legendary series of matches against arch rival Anthony Karpov. Garry broke Bobby Fischer's rating record in 1990, and his own peak rating record remained unbroken until 2013. His famous matches against the IBM supercomputer Deep Blue in 1996 and 1997 were key to bringing artificial intelligence and chess into the mainstream. Garry's been a contributing writer to the Wall Street Journal, since 1991, a frequent commentator on politics and human rights. He speaks frequently to business audiences around the world on innovation strategy and peak mental performance. In 2013, he was named a senior visiting fellow at the Oxford Martin School. His book, How Life Imitates Chess, on decision-making is available in over 20 languages around the world. He's the author of 2 acclaimed series of chess books, My Great Predecessors and Modern Chess. The format today will begin with opening remarks from Garry, followed by a conversation with club member Anna Nikolayevsky, and also a chess player. Anna is the founder and chief investment officer of Axel Capital, and we're honored to have her as our moderator. We're going to take audience questions from those in the room, so please be thinking about your questions, and we will end promptly at 1 o'clock. As a reminder, this conversation is on the record, and we, in addition to having a large member audience online, we have media online as well. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Garry to the stage.
It's a bit confusing to have 2 mics. I hope only one picks up the sound. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. I thought about my opening remarks and just probably would be appropriate, since you talked about chess, to start with my life after chess. So in 2005, I stopped playing professional chess, ended my professional chess career, and joined what some people mistakenly call Russian politics. I was very skeptical about calling it politics because if you compare it, the Russian political events with the game of chess. So I always said that in chess we had fixed rules and unpredictable results, and in Russian was exactly the opposite. And as you could see now, the rules kept changing, but the same person is still staying there. And it's very clear that he will be removed from the office not by the ballot. I wouldn't say by the bullet, but obviously it's the Putin's dictatorship reached the point where any nonviolent resistance it's useless inside the country because they are in full control. But in 2005, things didn't look that bad. So I thought that we had enough common sense and also some positive experience of the 90s when Russia was a feeble democracy under Boris Yeltsin. And I thought that Russian public at large will not have an appetite to go back to the dark ages. So it ended up, just to cut a long story short. So it's ended up that after 8 years of doing my best, I had to emigrate. I have to leave Russia facing an imminent arrest because things, it's the dictatorships very rarely is a result of tanks on the street. It's not overnight coup. It's a steady process. It's far more dangerous because tanks in the streets, people could get really angry. But if it's step by step, so it's even if you look at the, say, Nazi Germany, so it was not from Hitler's acquiring power in Kristallnacht, there were 5 years, actually nearly 6, just this 5.5 years. And it's same happened, is Putin's Russia. It's just, step by step, they just, the space of the freedom has been shrinking. With one law, with one regulation, with one, this is, you have to read it this way and that way. So there's a comma here, full stop there, and suddenly you end up with real regulations. It's all under the law, but the law is very different from one that was 20 years ago, and the same person still in power. So, and this was, I was kindly invited by Russian investigative committee to testify on a major political case, and I decided I would not try my luck. So when I started my activity of fighting for democracy and human rights in Russia, so my goal was, okay, I hope my kids would grow up in a free country. They are now in the United States. They were born, my daughter was born in 2006 in New York, our son in 2015. But what I couldn't imagine is that there would be a day where I will have to apply my knowledge and experience fighting for democracy to this great country. So what worried me, and that's why in 2017 I formed a new organization called Renew Democracy Initiative with my friends here in New York, more like a social club. Just had few moderate Democrats and a small group of my friends that I called refugees from the Wall Street Journal. Yes, those like Bret Stephens or Max Boot that couldn't stomach Trump's rise to power. And the idea was to warn Americans about the danger of polarization, or I would say tribalization of politics, where the debates become, it's irrelevant because you're not listening to the person on the other side. It's belongings to a tribe that becomes more important than any intellectual arguments that you can bring to the table. So I believe that America was just entering a very dangerous zone of being besieged by the radicalism from both sides. You had one side challenging the liberal democracy as an institution, on the other side challenging the market economy. As two fundamental pillars of America's success have been challenged for ideological reasons, but from opposite sides. And that's also something that it's probably not well understood, is that democracy doesn't die being attacked from one side. So going back to Nazi Germany, it's like a popular belief that Hitler won elections. He never won elections. He won plurality. So the highest result of Nazi Party in November 1932 was just over 37%. The problem is that in the same elections, communists made 16, which meant that more than half of the German electorate voted against democracy. I was greatly concerned about the future of American democracy because I saw that the world kept changing very rapidly. And the main reason that I'm not sure whether you can apply the laws of physics to geopolitics, but my experience tells me that there is no vacuum. Geopolitical vacuum doesn't stay long. America walks away, somebody gets in. And you can start naming them. Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, Putin, China, and so on. And I was afraid that these two trends could eventually emerge. And it's probably not appropriate to actually to spoil someone's appetite at lunch. But I have a few pieces of bad news. Number one is we're at war. Like it or not, we're at war, not because we want it. No, we hate the idea, but the war is declared on us. And no matter how many times you hear top brass in DC or in Brussels or in Berlin saying the opposite, it doesn't change the equation. We are at war because Vladimir Putin believes he is not fighting Ukraine, but he is fighting NATO, led by the United States. On top of that, he's fighting the liberal world order that he thinks is just, should be reversed back to the days where might was right. Again, that's not me saying it. He has been saying that. It's Russian propaganda, keeps repeating it 24/7. And we have other guys that are just lining behind him because he may be viewed as a spearhead of this attack on liberal world order. And they use every opportunity to spread the conflict. We are dealing with a cancer, and you don't negotiate with cancer, you cut it off. You don't, it spreads. I just came back last night from Sedona conference. It's organized by McCain Institute. I was one of the speakers there, and we had online a guest, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, who, as you can guess, complained about very inadequate support for Ukraine from the Western countries. And he said that we were, the NATO and America were always one step behind Putin, because you say don't escalate, and as Putin takes it as escalation, as an invitation to escalate. And then I said, just didn't want to argue with foreign minister, but we're not one step behind. We're 2 wars behind, because the biggest concern here is what would happen if we do this, this, and that, and it could lead to the World War III. I mean, sorry, you're just late. Putin is already fighting World War IV. World War III for Putin, again, that's not me. This is Russian propaganda. I'm simply just referring you to what they've been saying. World War III was a Cold War, and they lost it. And they're fighting the World War IV, which they believe they can win, not because they're strong. And that's where all the parallels with the 1930s, with appeasement. That's where all the parallels fail, because in the 1930s, if you go back to 1938, this infamous Munich deal and the appeasement policies and the criticism that you can find in all history books about Chamberlain, Daladier, and about the American isolationism. If you look at the political map of the late 1930s, you will just find out that the democracy was not a dominant force. You had Britain and France, that's two democracies. There are a few others in Europe that were less relevant. America that was not interested in getting engaged in another European war, so the isolationism there was far stronger than today here. And on the other side, you had empires of evil that were just far stronger than Putin today, or even China. You had Soviet Union on the other side, so that's still an ally of Nazi Germany. You have Nazi Germany, you have fascist Italy, and Empire of Japan. Just think about a balance. Yes, eventually Soviet Union, after beginning of war with Germany, shifted the sides. But the late 1930s, the balance was not in our favor. Today, we have overwhelming military, economic, and let's say political, cultural advantage. But the difference is, back then, we had Sir Winston Churchill and FDR. I don't want to mention who is running our affairs today. So we had political will that helped us to overcome the deficit of materials, and people were ready to make sacrifices and believe in values. Today, we have everything we need to win, but we have no political will. It's a shame to think that Ukrainian cities are being bombarded by Putin's missiles. People are being killed as we speak, and everybody talks about small. I don't want to sound callous. This is what's happening in Gaza is also tragic, but there are many days, many nights in Ukraine where Putin drops more explosive on Ukraine than Israel dropped on Gaza for 6 months, and those are ballistic missiles. Putin is using the weapons being used there. They just if Israel could use Putin's tactic for 1 hour in Gaza, the war will be over. But this is the difference. Israel is a democracy. No matter what people shout on the streets, it's a democracy. If Israel was really apartheid and genocidal state, the war would be over. That's what Putin has been doing. And by the way, this is quite amazing. That's why I say it's not just a simple war of just bringing us back to the days of the World War II or Cold War. It's amazing that we have the war here because we just all of a sudden, we're on slippery ground. At least, back in 1940s or 1950s or 1960s. So we had people believing in certain values and recognizing that we're defending our world. And while we had a disagreement, we never, expected a mass protest against our fundamental values that is reversing, again, using chess analogy, black and white. And I wish, I had a better story to tell, but I think it's very important for us to recognize that this is a war, since I already used chess analogy, that has good and evil. But unlike chess, it doesn't have a draw. It cannot be a tie. Either we win or we lose. And any success of the other side means we lose. And for those who believe that you can you can save yourself by making a sacrifice. Oh, let Ukraine give up some territories. This is, it's one of the most cynical and it's horrible statements that's I ever heard. Because territories are not. It's not North Pole. It's not Antarctica. It's not even Sahara. It's territory means people living on this territory. And it's by saying, oh, let's Putin have 20% of Ukrainian territory, means you give up millions of people that don't want to be enslaved by Putin's regime. And of course, he doesn't stop. So every concession we make, it's an invitation for future attacks. So we have problems on the other side of Atlantics, but we also have a problem in this country. So it's the way the Europeans see America. It's also quite depressing, because I grew up in a world where America was a factor. It was like, I wouldn't say shining city on a hill, but definitely it was a guardian of democracy. Hate it or love it, it was there. And everybody took it into account. Today, nobody's sure. So the country that embodied strength and integrity when I was a kid, now today offers on the menu weakness and corruption. And again, that emboldens the other guys. No matter what happens here in November, it seems that, again, America, it's a long road to recover your America's credibility. When you hear American politicians saying, oh, we can solve the problem by offering, let's say, Israel, our security guarantees. So is it what, is a clown show? American security guarantees? Ask Afghanis. You remember Kabul? It's not Saigon. It was not forced. Leaving 350,000 Afghans who worked with Americans, as in the hands of Taliban. Oh, 30 years ago, America forced Ukraine to give up nuclear weapons. By the way, Ukraine had more nukes in 1994 than Britain, France, and China combined. So what are these guarantees? So it's a dangerous world, and it's getting even more dangerous because if you lose, if we lose credibility, that means at one point we have to use full force. Because dictators, they never ask why, so why not? And it seems that now they can ask why not and move anywhere they want. Obviously, they'll cross a red line that will be a real red line, not Obama red line, not Trump red line, not Biden red line. It was a real red line. But the price we'll pay will probably be too high. And again, I remain an optimist because I believe democracy prevails. We always find strengths to fight back and to win the battle, and even win a war. But the question is how much we all have to pay. And as of today, Ukrainians paying with their blood. And again, the overall global map for democracy looks much worse than 20 years ago. So I hope that it doesn't put you in a very depressing mode, because I still believe we're stronger. And it's just for those who say, "Oh, we're losing everything." Yeah, we just it's technologically, so we're being surpassed. And look at China. My response is China gave us virus, America gave us vaccine. That's all we have to know about technological advance. On this optimistic note.
Thanks for coming, Garry. It's really great to have you here. You're a polymath, which is very rare. And I always appreciate how you take the ideas of offense and defense that you learned in chess and apply it to politics and various other global strategies. My first question is, we took for granted a very long period of peace that now seems to have ended. Do you think that the situation in Ukraine could have been prevented?
Now, I'm always very punctual, so that's to make sure I understand the time frame. It's a long period of peace. Are you talking about the period after World War II or after the collapse of the Soviet Union?
After the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Fine, that's better because we had a Cold War. So yes, but the peace was a result of the triumph of liberal democracy. It's the free world led by the United States. And I think the biggest mistake that one could make, and we did, was to believe that the evil can die. So it can be buried under the rubble of Berlin Wall for a while. But the moment we lose our vigilance, the moment we become complacent, it sprouts out. And I think it's what's happening in the 90s is that I say this America and the free world lost a great opportunity to reform the global order. United Nations had to be reformed. We needed just the institutions that could promote democracy and not simply serve as the catwalk for dictators that show up here in this town every September and to brag about their quote unquote accomplishment. And we gave time for bad actors to regroup. And what made things worse is that while during the Cold War, we still could be separated physically by the Berlin Wall and also by the walls that the Iron Curtain, the imaginable Iron Curtain that prevented people in the unfree world to learn about events happening in the free world. Today, these barriers don't exist anymore, which means that there's no way you can keep people in unfree world, and that's probably 60+% of the population, uninformed about life elsewhere. So the only way for dictators and authoritarian leaders to keep the situation under control is to justify their endless stay in power by expanding the conflicts. Ukrainian, the answer to your question, yes, of course, it could be avoided. And I could start pointing out at moments where it could be avoided. For instance, let's start with the election year. South Carolina 2000, John McCain wins the primaries and gets nomination, likely winning elections. There will be no Putin. I can bet my bottom dollar. With John McCain in the office in 2000, there will be no Putin. Even in 2008, maybe it was not too late for John McCain because he knew KGB was KGB. And Putin was he was not sure. If you even follow what Putin said, back in 99, 2000, and 2005 and 2007, it's always, it's as every dictator, he got emboldened by the weakness. In 2005, he was already confident enough saying the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. But this was 2005. In 2007, he said NATO must go back to 1997 borders. But again, his attack against Republic of Georgia back in 2008 was limited. Though I already knew it would come, it would come to a much larger aggression. But again, it took 6 more years before he eventually attacked Ukraine. Again, for me, it was again natural progression, because every dictator always ended up with foreign aggression as the only instrument to justify his, let's say, domestic shortcomings. Yeah, you just have to read history books. And Putin had enough opportunities to boost his credentials by carving pieces of lost Russian empire. And after Crimea 2014, and no reaction from the free world, except a few words, but lip service, nobody cared. I had no doubt the war with Ukraine was inevitable. So I've been saying it for 8 years, that the war would be inevitable, that Putin would go beyond the territories that he acquired. He just stole, actually, in 2014. But we still had probably a few moments. This is the 2013 red lines in Syria. I think that was the moment where Obama administration could send a signal by removing Assad from power. The lack of response, Putin read it as the sign of weakness. Yeah, and even it's probably the last moment where Putin believed he could do whatever. It's, as I already mentioned, Kabul airport. I still can't believe we witnessed it. I was a kid, the Soviet Union showed some documentary or some footage from Saigon, from the helicopters, they take me from the roof. But again, the war was already lost. It's just nobody wanted to fight the war, and it was inevitable. What's happening in Kabul was not inevitable, and it just showed that America lost any will to fight for allies. It was a betrayal beyond imagination. Of all so many people left behind for no good reason. 5,000 American troops, could be kept there indefinitely. The year before the America's removal from Afghanistan, there was not a single casualty. 1 year that was, yeah, it's costly. But are you telling me that having Taliban there is less costly? And also, again, it's not just Taliban. It sends a signal, because yes, everything is connected now. The world is interdependent. You can't expect that events happening in Venezuela or just in North Korea do not influence other hotspots on the map.
So Garry, what's the best deterrent? Is it a large military? Does it come down to the largest defense budget, or does nuclear make it all irrelevant?
Well, let's set aside, nukes. Let's not, because the moment you say nukes, probably the whole discussion should be over. So yeah. And by the way, that also tells you that every other country that is worried about its her security must have nukes. That's great. So, and that's what you hear from Ukrainians. If we had nukes, we would be safe. And by the way, who forced us? Bill Clinton, back in 1994. So this was the agreement. That's so. Alongside those Brits, but obviously America played the crucial role, forcing Ukraine to give up nukes. So we're still, in a world where conventional weapons play an important role. But before you decide on your military budget, on the size of your military, or just on the scope of the operation and your engagement overseas, you have to decide on your strategy. What is your end goal? That's again, chess player speaking. So and as of today, we have no strategy. So what is the strategy here and there? So it's all about let's negotiate. American foreign policy for a long time has been reactive, not proactive. Going back to Obama years, then you had Trump for very different reasons, and then now this administration. So unless you decide what you want to accomplish in Ukraine, it doesn't make much sense to debate the size of the military package. because we're still, living in a world where this administration, alongside with many European allies, failed to say three simple words: Ukraine must win. That's how you fight the war. Ukraine must win.
So
And the win includes liberation, as we say, liberation, reparation, and justice. We stand with Ukraine as long as it takes means absolutely nothing. It's ambiguous statement that doesn't help you to win the war.
So are you more optimistic on NATO after Sweden and Finland joined? Or it's irrelevant?
No, it's not irrelevant. Irony is not irrelevant. NATO is so much stronger than Russia. But the question is, yes, they joined, fantastic. But but how does it affect the ongoing war? The NATO has been celebrating, its accomplishment. Now it's 75th anniversary. We never been united, as united as now. Yes, but this unity has been cemented by Ukrainian blood. 200,000 Ukrainian men died, not counting civilians, and half of the country being destroyed, for you to celebrate it. NATO has weapons that has been designed just for one purpose only: to save Europe from Russian aggression. Why these weapons are collecting dust now? Do you want us to start counting it? You still have Patriot missiles standing in countries like Spain and Greece. What are they doing there? Oh, they are what? Expecting attacks? Is Greece going to be attacked by Turkey, another NATO country, or Spain by what? By Algeria? They're not there. And this country, it's a big debate about supplemental bill. And of course, the behavior of MAGA Republicans and Trump is despicable. But the President of the United States had so many other ways of helping Ukraine. There are 12,000 tanks standing in reserves, 3,000 active duty, 12,000 tanks. America gave Ukraine 31 tanks, 31. So as for the shells, yes, there are problems, of course. Nobody was preparing for this the war that resembled more World War I than World War II. But America still has millions of cluster munition. I bet you that most of them are in Germany because they have to be very close to the front line. You cannot use it by law. So that's why all the presidential waiver, you don't need Congress authorization because again, you cannot use them. Put a presidential waiver and send them to Ukraine. There are at least 2 million of them now held in Germany. But again, it's about deciding whether you want to win the war or not, whether you want Ukraine to negotiate with Putin, force it, or you want Ukraine to win. America and Germany and have enough missiles to destroy the bridge. The bridge is still there. 2.5 years from the beginning of full-scale invasion, the bridge, which is the main logistics supply line to Russian Crimea, is still there because Ukraine doesn't have missiles to attack. It seems now, after Ukraine being totally devastated, they lifted the restrictions because there was clearly a promise made by this administration not to attack the bridge and some of the sensitive Russian targets. So, but again, it's about deciding whether you want to win or not, and people in that part of the world, in Poland or in Baltic nations, they understand that if Ukraine, God forbid, Ukraine falls, then they're next. And again, it's quite ironic, but when you ask military experts, the combined military power of NATO, the northeastern flank of NATO, which includes Finland, Sweden, Poland, Baltic nations, and add Ukraine, will crush Russia probably in a few weeks. Again, set aside nukes. We can separate this separately, but conventional forces of these countries is more than enough. They look small, but when you start adding them up and look at the training and the quality of the weapons, they'd rather be in St. Petersburg than that's. Everybody says, "Oh, Russians will be in Tallinn in 3 days." I'm not so sure. I think it's more likely Estonia some things will be in St. Petersburg. So again, it's pure military analysis. Yes, we have everything. We have missiles, we have shells, we have artillery, we have military jets, but we have no strategy. And NATO, as I already said, was designed, for one purpose: to save free Europe from Russian aggression. Back in 1949, the battleground was River Rhine. Today is River Dnieper, but the principle hasn't changed. So why we are so timid in helping Ukraine to win the war, which doesn't require a single American life to be at risk? All needed the weapons that have been designed, I repeat, to fight Russians. And it's more expensive to destroy these weapons in the storage than to send them to Ukraine.
Gary, Macron has been extremely vocal lately, and he recently said that it's unsustainable for Russia to maintain a 30% military budget to GDP indefinitely. Do you agree with that?
Look, we don't know whether it's 30%, 20%, 40%. Russia is probably reaching the peak of military production. Again, I would question word indefinitely. Yes, probably Putin can carry the same pace of war for another couple of years, maybe a year or something. But whether he'll run out of money and resources before Ukraine run out of men. So his calculation is that he can go on. Yeah, you can already see some signs of it's the kind of the breaks in Putin's war machine. He was very cautious in recruiting people, soldiers from the big cities. When you look at Moscow and St. Petersburg, the amount of the casualties, it's insignificant compared to the other depressed regions or national republics. I think in Moscow is something like 400,000 casualties, and in places like Tuva and Buryatia is nearly 200. So eventually he will have to start digging from the big centers, and that might create more problems. But again, he still has time, and he has power, so he can bring them in. And sanctions are not working. Again, it's made things more expensive, but his revenue from oil and gas is higher than ever, because again, this is the idea of the prices, the ceiling price for oil. It looked good on paper, but played really had no effect on Russian oil export, and the war they would continue, and it's look, when you just mentioned President Macron, and who had been in the last couple of months, he had been playing with the idea of sending French troops to Ukraine. But again, does he concern about Ukraine, or he concerns about Russia's controlled government in Niger to continue to supply uranium to French industries, because France needs this uranium. And now, thanks to America's hateless foreign policy and France also indifference, so Russians and Chinese control almost the entire African belt from Somalia to Senegal. And Niger is one of actually probably the key country with uranium deposits that are crucial for French nuclear power stations.
So on a slightly different topic, Elon Musk also recently said that the traditional media is dead. So how do we harness the power of social media and its ability to suppress or emphasize voices? How do we use it for peace?
No, I don't think we should use it for peace at the time of war. So now I'm concerned how we're going to win the war, because as you can see, the social media plays a very important role in putting this country ablaze. It's just this country is already facing a serious challenge, and clearly it's not unprepared. Some say it reminds of 1968. I think it's much worse. Again, in 1968, at least there was a war, and 500,000 American soldiers were fighting there. Yeah, you may argue it was a good reason or not, but at least you had, just serious consequences for the country. Today, it's very different. I'd say it's all based on fake news. It's all total, falsification of facts, and it seems that so many young people are just being brainwashed and misled. And again, my question is, how are we going to sort out these problems? You can talk about peace, but again, it's probably an outdated call. We can talk about peace when we win the war.
Is America similar to a boiling frog, where over time we've become extremely desensitized to attacks all over the world?
It's good.
And internally.
It's a good analogy. It's a good analogy. What's happening now in the colleges, and and basically paralysis of the government and most of the institutions. It's demonstration that we are so far behind recognizing the gravity of the situation. We can argue whether it's a pure anti-Semitism. It's just, as we know, this virus doesn't disappear. It's always its recurrence. It's always troubles. Though it's quite interesting because traditional anti-Semitism came from the right, from the monarchists, and go back to the 19th century. So, this one is, and then from there, you had this is the anti-Israeli feelings. Now it's exactly the opposite. It's just it's anti-Israeli sentiments, and then just this anti-Semitism comes next. But more and more we see that it's not just Israel, it's not just anti-Semitism, it's America. Death to America is just it's being hurt all the time. It's attack on American values, and that's the look. I would make something about it. So it's just it's all these countries totally defenseless against this kind of it's subversive. I mean, I'm sure that again, I wouldn't say that's probably remembering J. Edgar Hoover would be appropriate, but still, I'm sure he's turning his grave. So this is not even Soviet propaganda, because you had certain validations back in 40s, 50s, and 60s. Today, it's I don't know. After October 7th, I mean, you can seriously discuss things. And how can you debate things that are just that do not make any sense for anyone who believes in elemental distance. I'm losing my power of my argument because it's this. I never thought I would be in this kind of situation. It's just debating what. I can debate, this is the facts. Yeah, we can. I'm happy to debate with anybody who's the story of the Palestine, or this is what's happened in 1947 or in 1964. I'm a good scholar of history. But how can you debate this from the river to the sea? No, I cannot debate that. So, and again, it's not that they saying this to keep saying we want two-state solution. They don't want it. It's not me. They say no to it. It's still it's the whole idea was from the very beginning. It's just to eliminate Jewish state as a factor, and they have not changed their mind. And if Washington wants to live in this world of illusions, no, it's still there. It's just the belief that that Israel must cease to exist. It's still a driving force of Iran. Iranian foreign policy is based on that. So say whatever you want. They want Israel to be destroyed. Putin's foreign policy is based on destruction of Ukraine. Ukraine must cease to exist. Putin's. So how can you negotiate?
So how did you escalate that?
We fight back. We fight back. Oh, here is how many of these students are on students' visas. I missed something. Anybody was expelled from America? I never heard about it. So let's start doing something. I'm sure they violate the rules. Okay, most of the arrested are not students, but still, start doing something. Just following the law. It's just protesting, fine, perfect. Go to Central Park and protest. But yes, if you harass other students, if you just prevent normal process, you should pay the consequences. It's just, and they try to make a connection to American civil rights movement. What a shame! When MLK and his supporters, and by the way, students from the northern states traveling to Tennessee or Alabama in the early 60s, they knew what they would face. Grave consequences, imprisonment, sometimes even worse. And on Selma Bridge, they were not met by welcome reception, but by police with dogs. And today they just they want to be protest and they want to be treated well. Fantastic! Oh, you can't touch us. And of course you can see that it's one escalation. Same as there. So Ukrainians were willing to do the job. So give them weapons, send them tanks, missiles, let them do the job. Same with Israel. Let them finish the job. Yeah, it's terrible. It's just what's happening is any human loss of human life is a tragedy. But you have to respond, and also don't pretend. What really makes me sick? The world is in grave. It's facing so many problems. According to the United Nations, which is of course it's a partial statistics, 854 million people are on the verge of starvation. 854 million people every day, according to the United Nations. And again, it's the numbers are reduced. 25,000 people die from hunger. 1 hour we spent here, 1,000 people died. But we talk about Gaza. Hello, 5 million people dying in Sudan now from hunger. Who talks about it? Nobody talks about it. It's not interesting. You talk about one piece of land that receives more food than many places in the world where the food is so much needed. I mean, let's act, with decency and also show strength. In 1941, in June, when Hitler attacked Soviet Union, the United States, still being neutral for the next 6 months, sent to Soviet Union 360,000 tons of weapons, ammunition, and food. Europe was under Nazi control. The Far East route was yet to be developed, so mostly it went through the Arctic route. That they had to face German submarines and Luftwaffe. They did it, but because you had FDR in the office, you had people that recognized they were leaders of the free world. They had to fighting back. Even America was, by the way, still neutral, and he had to go around. People say, "Oh, it's so difficult." Speaker Johnson was standing on the way. I mean, Speaker Johnson. Speaker Johnson. He's the main obstacle, to save Ukraine. Yeah, FDR was on the verge of impeachment by helping Britain and then Russia. America was still neutral because he knew what was at stake. So we have to recognize a lot of things are at stake now, and pretending that we can negotiate our way through, it's a recipe for disaster.
Are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Garry. I have two questions. Trying to get some positive today, I guess. So number one, with everything that's happening in the world geopolitically, Russia, China, India buying oil from Russia, as you mentioned, that Russia is actually making more money right now than just before the war started. And then we have the South American region as well, with a lot of social movements and developing of non-democratic policies. So where is your hope for the democratic landscape in the US coming from, in terms of where do you see that leadership is in the United States? And the other piece of the equation, let's just go a little bit further. And I'm not sure, I'm actually curious if you've seen Navalny's team documentary on the Russia in the 90s and kind of analysis of the history now as we're 20 plus years after that, and how Putin actually came to power. Where do you see hope in Russia in the future that scenario does not repeat itself? Thank you.
Okay, in the scenario that brought Putin to power is far more complicated than one that was presented in this movie, because with all facts that had been properly presented, so they were still missing KGB. KGB was not in the movie, so as if it was just an irrelevant player. Speaking about Russia, I think this the real problem back in the 90s, and I could say now as someone who played a certain role in all these events, was that we never realized that it was not just Soviet Union and communist ideology, but that stood on the way of Russia's return to the family of civilized nations, but the imperial rule. Russia was an empire, and it's unfortunately still an empire. And only by abolishing the last empire on Earth and starting from scratch, so we can offer Russia, or whatever is left on this geographical space, to find its space again in just among democratic nations. But it's also part of my complaint. It's no strategy, because objectively the main reason for America not supplying Ukraine and Europe is being also very timid in offering this help is a fear that Ukrainian victory would lead, as it happened before in Russian history, to the collapse of the regime and collapse of the country. So you go back, and if history is any guide, so in mid-19th century, the loss of the First Crimean War led to the abolishment of serfdom. The loss of the Russo-Japanese War led to the creation of constitutional monarchy. The stalemate of World War I led to the collapse of the Romanov dynasty, and the loss of the Cold War to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So it's logical that that's the Ukrainians' victory and Ukrainian flag in Sevastopol could lead to the changes in Moscow. And I think Putin will not survive. It's just, again, this is kind of Russian history. So if the war goes well, people can tolerate hardship. If the war is lost, things change. So this is the massive political change is always a result of geopolitical catastrophe and military defeat. So then we have a chance, but you need someone here or in Europe to actually accept it as the inevitable outcome, because as long as Putin stays in power, the war would not end. That's simple. I mean, Putin is war because his political and economic foundation is just of his power is war. He needs the war both, for economic reasons, but also just to justify his never-ending stay in power. Same, by the way, with Middle East. As long as Iranian mullahs are in power, it will be never ending. So regime change should not be a taboo as it today in Washington. And speaking about future of Russia, so I've been trying for the last 2 years to sell an idea, which I call half-joke, I call Russian Taiwan. The reason I use the word Taiwan is just, I didn't want to imply that we're trying to create some sort of government exile, because I'm not over-optimistic. So people who share my views, Michael Khodorkovsky and others, they probably represent a small minority of Russians, but they do exist. Even if it's 5%, and probably the number is bigger, you talk about millions of people. The problem is today, it's as if you are Russian, you are just, you are totally cut, from the free world. So this is you can't find your way just to the free world, even if you want to denounce Putin. There are no mechanisms. And also, by the way, if you say that Ukraine is suffering from lack of manpower, you have some Russians that probably might be willing to change sides and to fight with Ukraine. But again, you have to start working. Again, going back to 1940, free France, de Gaulle. It's, with all due respect to General de Gaulle, actually he was probably colonel in June 1940, he had very little power, or political clout. We definitely have more on our side today. The problem is it's not Russia missing de Gaulle's, it's the West is missing Churchill's. So someone would recognize it. And I think it will be a very important step forward to start to create what I call a matrix of the future Russia. Just allow people who will say three things fundamentally. The war is criminal, regime legitimate, Crimea is Ukraine, signing declaration, denouncing Putin, and receiving kind of residence permit in the free world. So start creating a foundation of future Russia. If you cannot do it inside the country, do it outside the country. But again, that requires strategic view. You need someone to start thinking about it and not pretending that no matter how many crimes committed by Putin regime, that's still the best the best we can do is still negotiate.
One more question.
Thank you. It's very insightful, but I'll slightly have a different question. Before you, there was a generation of people inspired by Bob Fisher in the US, and after you won the Deep Blue against the IBM computers, today AI, where much faster computing, do you think will you beat the new AI machines? Or do you think the human minds are actually getting hold of the AI?
Now, look, the story was over long time ago. So this any computer beat any human in any game. So that's we know, because they make fewer mistakes. They're not perfect, but they definitely dominate any field where you have certain rules and patterns. So we are no longer competing. We are just, we are cooperating, and there's so much we can learn from machines. I see nothing dramatic in the fact that we have machines that are helping us to advance. Machines made us stronger in the past. They made us faster. Intelligent machines should make us smarter. So I believe that's the way to move forward. Obviously, AI power could be a dangerous weapon, but nothing to do with machines. It's about humans. I always repeat, humans have a monopoly for evil. So that's why the problem is not AI control robots or whatever. This is the Terminators that will pose a deadly threat to humanity, but the bad actors that have access to this AI, but it had nothing to do with machines. And actually, the fact that we're still way ahead, because we are still way ahead. So it's the at the best of my knowledge, America is still a world leader in the field, but we see that the spying, so and also using the economic landscape, but where you can just make donations to universities and just get access to the results of the research. So bring us back to a strategy. So I think that the technology benefits free world, but we need just to recognize that it's not a one-way street. So we just have to also be ready to be challenged.
Thank you, Garry.
Well, that was a great conversation. Thank you so much for giving us the honor of being here today. I wanted to just go quickly through our agenda, the event calendar coming up. On May the 21st, we have Dr. Ed Yardeni, the president of Yardeni Research. We'll have a roundtable discussion as part of our Rebuilding New York City series on the morning of May 20th. That will be with Camille Joseph Varlek. She's the chief of staff for Mayor Adams, and she's been quarterbacking the immigration crisis for him. Later that afternoon, we'll have our club chair, John Williams, head of the New York Fed, for a luncheon. And we have also coming up early June 4th, before the June FOMC, Glenn Hubbard and Larry Summers joining us again. And then for those that are into gaming, a very popular area, Strauss Zelnick, the chair and CEO of Take-Two Interactive, will join us on June 17. And by the way, John Williams is going to do that interview for us. And then on June the 25th, we have Lisa Cook coming, who is a governor down in Washington on the Federal Reserve Board. And then the newest edition is June the 13th. We're going to have a signature luncheon honoring Secretary Janet Yellen. And that will be a special occasion for us, as she'll receive our Peter G. Peterson Leadership Excellence Award. And we hope that you and your guests can join us. As the presidential election heats up, we will be inviting both of the two major party nominees after the conventions to speak. So stay on the lookout for those events. And as always, we do get our events listed on the website, so please do continue to check those dates. In closing, I want to be sure to thank those of our 375 members of the Centennial Society joining us today, as their contributions continue to be the financial backbone for our programming. So having said that, thank you for everyone that attended today. Thank you to those that are joining us virtually, and please enjoy your lunch if you're in the room. Thank you.